not realize how bad the iPad kid epidemic was until yesterday. We've all heard of the issues with these kids that are being raised on iPads. When I tell you I was absolutely flabbergasted at the interaction that I had with a child yesterday, I just have no words for it. I'm a bartender at a resort, and this family came up to the bar to order their food. One of the kids, who's about 8 or 9 years old, asked what flavor of Dippin' Dots we had, so I handed her a menu. This way she could read the flavors, and I was going to continue helping the rest of the party. When I tell you that I handed her the menu and she looks at me dead in the eyes and goes, "I can't read." I was left absolutely speechless for a few seconds. You're gonna tell me around 2nd, 3rd grade she can't read?
What we're going to do tonight is I'm going to show you some clips, and we're going to hear what teachers are saying about Gen Alpha, people my age, because I have a theory. I have a theory that this is something that's only being put into the algorithm for people my age, younger people. You know, I'm not sure the demographic of all of the audiences put together because I'm on different platforms, and just in general, I don't know how many people are or aren't parents, but I think it's a pretty insane problem to have slipped undetected for this long. Very severe problem, and it worries me greatly because in 1984, for those of us who have read 1984 or even watched the movie, the one of the big things was newspeak, and the dictionary was always getting smaller. And if that's not exactly what's happened in so many different ways, I think a lot more people are waking up to the fact that words are powerful, but it's still very nuanced. There's some people who either you get it or you don't get it, and sometimes you will have like this huge dawning realization and it will hit you all at once, and it's kind of a powerful realization. But then getting into the habit of having dictionary or something on hand. I mean, you can use whatever you want, but I prefer like Webster's 1913, 1828, because those you can use for free online. There's like a URL and you can use them. Word parts dictionaries. I even have a dictionary of newspeak, oddly enough. But really getting into the habit of just looking words up. It doesn't, I mean, like if you don't know a word, look it up. But at the same time, even if it's a word that you already know, you want to look it up if it's of specific interest to you. Like if you have a specific interest into something and that word pops up and you need more information on it, just looking it up. Etymology is another thing. It's very important because it can really shed new light on the problem. It'll really just blow your perspective open. It did give you a different perspective. So, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to check out some clips, and we're going to just let everybody kind of get a big, bright look at the problem, and then I will give my commentary, and then we will go into the book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And I would be surprised if we don't hear it pop up in one of these videos, because it seems like this is something that people are now just finding out about, kind of going mainstream. So, okay, let's make me smaller, and I'll bring my windows up.
I officially take back everything I said about Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is practically a generation of brain scientists and rocket surgeons compared to what's coming. It is over for Gen Beta before it even began.
What the hell? What the hell? What the hell This is the way I live. Little boy still pushing big bills.
Your son got his shirt off and using an iPad at 6 months. He's about to download Binder. It's baby Tinder.
Gonna do with the teacher.
They're not just
take these Chromebooks out of the schools immediately. Immediately. I've been in the school system for a little over a year now. Child, from 6th to 12th grade, I am unable to read their handwriting. Bring back pencil and paper assignments. These children don't even know how to properly use the Chromebooks. They lose the chargers. They want to pop the screens out. They want to pop the buttons out. They come to school with it dead. The schools don't even have enough chargers for the... It's a mess. It's honestly a mess. The kids don't care about failing classes, bring back shame, bring back embarrassment. Why are you bragging to me that you have a 60 in a class, a 70 in a class, and you're in middle school? And everybody else, oh yeah, I got a 62, I got a 45. What? And their parents don't even care. They're like, oh, my mama don't care. My daddy don't care. I blame the parents. All of it starts at home. It's just super concerning. It's super concerning. And I'm talking about it as this is a generalized statement. Of course, there are students and pockets of kids who are great and excelling in all ways, shapes, and forms. But as a majority, they're cooked. They're cooked. The disrespect that they give the teachers, the disrespect that they give their parents, the disrespect that they show to each other. When I was in school, I was terrified of ever disrespecting my teacher, ever. Or getting a call home, oh my gosh, please don't call my mama, please, please, please. These kids now will hand you the phone, here, call my mama. I don't care, she's not gonna do nothing. Send me to the office, I don't care. What, you don't care? But when I do popcorn reading in class, then they wanna act all shy and embarrassed because they can't read. When I write instructions on the board on what to do, I write in cursive. They sit there, they're scared to even say, hey, can you write this in print? I can't read cursive. Instead, they just sit there and stare at each other or just try to play games on their laptops. It's so sad. It's really, really, really sad. I had to teach a kid how to use a dictionary the other day. I don't know.
Yeah, it's over.
We're having to dumb down curriculum to get these kids to where they need to be, and they're not getting there. I promise you, and I'm not the only one saying it.
But I don't understand why they're not stressing to y'all how bad it is. Like, I'm not even trying to be funny, but these kids are... I'ma just say this. I teach 7th grade, they are still performing on the 4th grade level.
They are so used to having a device in their hands at all times that when there comes a time there is no device, they will just start playing it with their thumbs and their fingers in the air as if they do have a device in their hand.
Kids can't follow basic instructions.
Having to teach and work with you guys as children has been the most traumatic experience of my life. I teach 5-year-olds ballet. They don't respect any authority. You ask them, can you stand in your designated spot? They're telling you no and shut up. And another thing that's heart-wrenching is horrifying. Your 5-year-old daughters are asking to listen to Pound Town. I'm playing them Princess Tiana ballet music. And they are asking me, can we hear Pound?
Everyone I know who wants to have kids, regardless of their other politics or economic background, all agree on not giving them screens until they're like 45. What's crazy is we've got a whole professional movie agency who tries to protect kids from hearing a bad word by rating movies PG-13. And yet Gen Alpha slang includes giot and thinking about a lot of more mature subjects when they're 6, and it's just part of their vernacular.
If Georgia's like, I have a bigger yacht than you, I'll be like,
what is a
be
yacht?
so free with it.
What? What on earth
I'm
is
sorry,
a yacht?
what?
A yacht.
I'll just say, I've actually this whole thing with slang is very interesting because it's all that you would think, okay, we all had that when we were young, sure, but what you're seeing now is that that's all there is. It's like there's actually no real words. They just communicate in the slang. And I guess it's kind of trendy or whatever, but I'm not privy to it. It's just very interesting. It's getting so instant. These trends will catch on, and it's really like wildfire. It just spreads before you know it. It's all around you.
What?
A yacht. So a yacht, it stands for girl, your booty thick.
Seriously.
Yeah, Boots. That it's. Unfortunately, what I think it is it's like this is so deeply ingrained. Obviously, that's exactly how it's been forever. That's how your father and his father and his father's father. That's very common. But what what I have kind of come to the conclusion as is, it seems like perhaps the last generation or two, some of them have, had children, but they themselves had never been given a proper upbringing. So it's almost like the parents slightly are children themselves in a way. And I think this is not a new problem. I think what's happening now is that it's catching up. I think it's actually taken a bit of time to get it to where it's at now. Now it is becoming very apparent. But I think for instance, when somebody doesn't learn that because they didn't have like somebody to lay it out like that, then they won't lay it out that way to their children. They won't instill that into their children. And then the children who have never been raised with it, they don't even know what you're talking about. It's foreign to them, and they're so they're not used to that. They're shocked when you see it. There you go. We need a little drum roll. Too bad I didn't have this like on a soundboard or something, but the little joke drum roll is pretty good. There you go.
Or dog video is putting your source of entertainment and pleasure as further and further removed from your practical life. So your practical life seems boring by comparison, even if it's subconscious. Even what YouTube used to be, like the YouTubers I grew up on, Niga Higa, Smosh, I mean, they had like kind of stupid comedy sketches sometimes, but they had a story, they had something going on, they had characters that would come back. Now you just have like these colorful moment-to-moment dopamine hits that don't extend into any kind of substance. Therefore, it's no surprise that kids can't hold long conversations or even socialize among themselves without resorting to brain rot or some kind of high-intensity game, because we've brought them up on quick flashing lights. My friend tried to ask his Gen Alpha cousin like how his life was like, if he was enjoying school, and he just didn't have anything to say. No observation, no feeling about it, not good, not bad, and he kind of said 6, 7, and it was funny.
I've witnessed this. Like I will make clear, I've seen this in my day-to-day life. I've seen people like this. This is not far from home for me. I'm much younger, but people I went to school with, they have younger brothers and sisters. Some of them even have children themselves. This real, like exactly what he's saying right now. It's very hard to keep conversation.
But it just masks the fact that he doesn't have any like opinions or feelings or like internal felt experience that he has access to. A number of historians believe that humans as they existed 20,000 years ago weren't conscious. To clarify, of course they were literally conscious, but what we mean is, how when you were a little kid you might have some memories of some sights and sounds and people you knew, but you didn't have like a bunch of opinions about it, or you didn't really feel like you were a full person going through the world like you do now. It's in that kind of way, where they were still conscious and aware of archetypes and people around them, but they didn't have this first-person, agentic, continuous stream of consciousness and specificity.
An interesting note on that, it's in the name, because when you go back and you look at the book of Genesis, it was only after they had eaten the fruit that they really were not the man and the woman, they became Adam and Eve. It was after the fall. So it was the individuation. Very interesting.
Of experience that we have now. It would have been a consciousness that was in kind more passive, and our consciousness would be in kind more active. And some ancient religion scholars theorize that the Bible, the Old Testament, is sort of the story of man becoming conscious, right? You start with these more allegorical, broad stories like Genesis, and then you reach toward the end of the Bible and they're more personal, journalistic narratives and characters that seem like someone you'd meet on the street rather than like a more mythological figure that you see at the beginning of the Old Testament. So I think we're reversing that trend for the first time in human history. I think we are starting to become less conscious. I think we are becoming part cyborg, and maybe it culminates with Gen Z as experiencing the world, but I think we're sort of going back.
We are now in a timeline where you can buy, quote,
smart refrigerators that come with a touch screen for whatever reason. And on these fridges, you can download TikTok and scroll as long as your heart desires on them, which is what the kids of today are spending their childhood doing.
What? Excuse me? Hey man, did you catch that new spicy meme? Yeah, I saw it in front of the frozen linguine in my refrigerator. Bruh. Kids are scrolling with their feet. And this is the starting point for Real Bike. And here's the thing.
I'm a 24-year-old second grade teacher. I'm pretty young in the teaching community, but there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that has made me feel older as a teacher than today when I was watching Toy Story 2 during a lunch brunch with some of my second graders, and we got to the scene in the movie where the little newspaper boy rides around on his bike and throws newspaper on the front porch of the house. And one of the little girls watching turned around to me and said, "Miss Smith, if a little boy ever threw trash like that at my house, I would yell at them." I said, "That's not trash, it's a newspaper." And they said, "What's a newspaper?"
The Gen Beta kids' minds are so melted, they won't even care if there's anything on their screen. They just care that it's colorful, and it's stimulating, and it's firing their neurons. This almost Gen Beta kid's iPad is literally broken because he just throws it, because he doesn't have any respect for his iPad, and he doesn't even notice it's broken. He just sees that there's colors on it, and that's enough for him.
What happened to your iPad? What happened? What happened to the iPad? No, let's look and figure it out. What the heliante did you do to the iPad? This is iPad number what? 8? My gosh. Money down the drain.
What the hell? Okay, why is this mom buying her kid 8 iPads when he doesn't even care when one of them is broken? These kids don't get iPads falling from the sky like manna from heaven. The parents are responsible here. They need to stop giving their kids their 8th iPad when they're 5. Why is better, okay? Gen Beta doesn't even know what a library is.
There were also other teachers who said that they had to explain what a library was to their students because they didn't know what a library was.
What the hell? Oh my God, no way.
And I know
it's just really scary that the future of the human race is currently under the spell of numerous screens all at the same time because they physically can't watch TikTok or YouTube without having stimulation from Roblox on another screen, or just straight up can't keep focused on just one individual game, so they need to be playing 3 at the same time. I did not realize how bad the iPad kid epidemic was until yesterday. We've all heard of the issues with these kids that are being raised on iPads. When I tell you I was absolutely flabbergasted at the interaction that I had with a child yesterday, I just have no words for it. I'm a bartender at a resort, and this family came up to the bar to order their food. One of the kids, who's about 8 or 9 years old, asked what flavor of Dippin' Dots we had, so I handed her a menu. This way she could read the flavors, and I was going to continue helping the rest of the party. When I tell you that I handed her the menu, and she looks at me dead in the eyes and goes, "I can't read." I was left absolutely speechless for a few seconds. You're gonna tell me around 2nd, 3rd grade, she can't read?
And they can't read an ice cream name. This is literally how big the text is.
There is 4 words at most for one flavor.
And this tweet very succinctly captures this decaying zeitgeist. A teacher overheard their students saying that if TikTok went down, they wouldn't know how to find music.
I'm sorry, what?
Video but refused to believe it. Tell me, 2007, 2008 kids, tell me you still know what a Wii is. This is too painful for me. Tell me you're not like Walter White.
We? Who's we? There is no we.
School kids are not reading. Kids are not reading. Kids cannot read. It doesn't matter if your child's at an A school or if your child's at a D school or if your child's at a charter school or a private school. I have seen kids at all areas. They all struggle.
These kids don't know how to read. They don't know how to write. They don't even know how to communicate to each other. They can't text. Ask middle school and high school teachers. Students are using speech to text to communicate with one another outside of school, and it's because they don't know how to write out the words.
Professors are literally reading to students aloud in class. In fact, according to Fortune, even some of the most so-called elite universities, professors there say they've changed their curriculum and teaching style specifically for these Gen Z students.
There's a literacy crisis in America, and it's affecting students of all ages, even college students. To give you an idea of what that looks like, almost 40% of 4th graders are scoring below basic in reading. And sadly, those scores don't always increase because by 12th grade, approximately 45% of high schoolers are performing below basic in reading. And these reading scores are the lowest that we've seen since 1992. And there's many theories about why this is happening, But the fact is, people are not really reading for fun anymore. Daily recreational reading scores have declined about 40%.
I have heard of the Black Awakening. It's a pretty good, it's what we're going through right now.
Students at public universities end up needing remedial courses just to attend college. But here's the problem. Only about 25% of college students that need to take a remedial course will end up finishing their 4-year college degree. Now let's talk about the adults. Over half of US adults read at or below a 6th grade level, and nearly 1/5 of adults struggle with basic literacy tasks. So all of these factors combined are leading professors to lower standards. And as we've talked about a ton on this channel, the standards are really low in K-12 education too. There is a ton of grade inflation and people are just being passed along. The really interesting thing is that a lot of these college students are aware of their reading deficits. At a major university, almost half of the students identified themselves as novice or reluctant readers unless they were strongly encouraged to read. So the question that many people ask is, why is this happening? And what are the teachers doing about it? And what a lot of people don't know is that teachers are not free to simply select the curriculum and select their teaching methods. If they are mandated to follow a certain ineffective reading curriculum, they sit by and see that it's not working, but their hands are tied. Let's hear from one of those teachers.
Teach 4th grade. I have 2 kids at a kindergarten reading level. I have about 4 kids at a 1st grade reading level. And they're telling me that I have to teach this 4th grade curriculum that these kids can't even read. They can't read the material, but I am not allowed to give them material that is at their level. Also, our wonderful curriculum we have, there's no reading groups. So we just do our whole group lesson and they do these things that they can't do. You know, I have maybe like 6 kids that are on grade level that can do the work that I'm like, hey.
Because a big mega corporation will decide what will benefit and educate kids the best because they are experts and they've done the research. And so they will decide. The teachers don't have to decide any of that. And it'll be better, right?
Hey, let's do this homework. 6 out of 24. I'm not supported. I asked for resources. My 2 kids, they can't read. I've been told I can't use anything that's not district approved. So I send emails, I make meetings for them to come and tell me what to teach them because they won't let me decide because they don't trust me because we are not valued anymore as educators. There is not a time period in the day now that I am allowed to have my kids read or me reading to them because they have our schedule so jam-packed and we have to do the curriculum to a T or we get reprimanded. Like, there is no creativity, there is no fun, there is no help, no resources. Kids that can't read, lots of them in 4th grade, I can only teach their curriculum this way. Like, we are failing our children.
I relate to this teacher so much. If you're new to this channel, I was a teacher for 8 years and I taught 4th through 8th grade English. I also taught at 5 different buildings, so I got to see a lot of different curriculums and leadership styles. And in some schools, I was truly free to teach, and those years were amazing. I could easily get through anywhere between 9 and 13 full-length novels a year when administration would leave me alone. I was able to take my 4th graders through the entire Chronicles of Narnia, all 7 books, in addition to several other books.
That's pretty impressive. Like, that's very impressive. Those are big books. So that's why they're not allowed to have time to read anymore, because you had teachers who were doing too well. And our children were learning. To answer the question, is our children learning?
and they grew so much. And when I had freedom as a teacher, I could do what was best for the students. If they needed small groups, I could do that. If I needed to supplement materials, I was free to do that. But just like the teacher we heard from, there were years where my instructional coaches and my principals came in and said, no more novels. You are not allowed to read novels with students at all. And during those years, they would make these mandates because they spent probably $100,000 on a new literacy curriculum that was always terrible. And I just had to sit and watch as my students were so sad because they could not read the books that we loved to read together. And the crazy thing to me is, from my experience, getting students to grow in reading is not terribly hard. My formula was really simple. We read a lot. I would make sure during class novel time that every single student had a copy of the novel in their hand, and their main job was to follow along. Sometimes we would have an audiobook narrator, sometimes I would read aloud, and sometimes students would read aloud. But the beauty of this strategy is that as long as they could hear the book being read to them, it didn't matter what level they were on, because they could follow along with their eyes and they were taking in the sounds of the words and all of the isolated skills that tests love to assess, like comprehension, context clues, theme, figurative language, all of the things we would discuss and work together as a class. They were naturally motivated and interested. But during the years where somebody came in and forced me to use a bad curriculum, there were never full-length novels. They were these little passages, sometimes from an actual book, but sometimes they were just canned kind of test passages where they would have to, like, in isolation, find these certain skills, and it just wasn't organic. It wasn't interesting.
From what I've gathered, a little bit that I've kind of understood over the past couple of weeks, that has made me decide to talk about this. It seems like really what they've done is they are thinking that they're doing this enlightened, expert-based curriculum, because that's how they pitch the sale for the curriculum. They're going to come and they're going to market it, say, hey, you want to buy our curriculum? It's got all these awards, and only one person's ever won the award because they created the award, and they went and made the trophy and everything. But the point being is, it sounds like it's just somebody who did everything you would do if you wanted to make sure children are not learning. Like, this is the most backward way to educate children. Everything that worked in the past has to be done away with. We can't have that anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. We need new math, even though 1 is 1 and 2 is 2. And it's always pretty much been that way. 1 is 1 and 2 is 2. Now we're going to have new math. And that's what started the domino. That was it was one of the big ones right there, because basically any parents who really knew how to do math, now you can't help your kids. Now your kids have to do it the way that school wants them to do it. So that's just, there's no way to look at that other than this weird illuminated, meaning smarter than, we know better than you do, this weird illuminated curriculum that they're teaching today.
And what I've heard over the past 5 or so years that I've been out of the classroom is the control of curriculum has only grown worse. The thing that I've always found super ironic is the big word in education is differentiation. They're like, you need to differentiate your instruction. You need to adapt things to all of these different learners. But then they pick curriculums where it's impossible to do that. But here's the irony. They manage teachers in a way that's not differentiated. And I'm going to be honest, I think it's laziness, because if you were to give teachers more freedom to use their expertise and to incorporate the strategies that they know works, the administrators don't want to have to oversee that. They don't want to have to work with teachers to see if their instructional strategies are effective. They rather just have the whole ship go down.
Going with my own example, I differentiate. That was the word that popped up. And so here is what Webster's 1913 dictionary says for differentiate: to distinguish or mark by a specific difference, to effect a difference in, as regards to classification, to develop differential characteristics in, to specialize, to de-synonymize. I think I said that right. To not make everybody the same. But they do this all in the name of equality. You know, we're making things equal and everybody's going to have an opportunity, whatever. And then to teachers, they're saying you have to do this differentiation. And so what does differentiate mean? It basically means to make sure that everybody is not equal, to do away with equality. So you could learn a little bit about a thing just looking up the words.
And that's what I experienced after 8 years. And the worst part is in several of the schools, they would come in mid-year and switch everything up. There were multiple schools where I came in and I did my own thing. I purchased the novels. I had all the resources and the materials, and I was doing great. And the kids were growing. And then somebody up in central office waved their wand and said, oh, everybody has to do the same thing now. We're switching to a new strategy. One of the most annoying years that happened was essentially there was a new push to get rid of novels, like full-length classroom novels, and make fifth graders sit on the rug and watch the teacher read kind of a baby picture book and then do these anchor charts. It was all about the anchor charts. And we were supposed to like pick a topic like theme and, you know, write out the anchor chart and ask kids questions based on what they listened to us read. And I just thought that was the craziest thing. Kids didn't have a book in their own hands. They couldn't follow along. These were baby books. But somehow in this crazy logic, they said that this was the research-backed strategy that had kids growing so much, and it was so miserable. And the final year I got in the classroom, in the beginning of the year, I was told that I could read novels, but then they switched to an online curriculum that had really random, weird text, and it was so boring, and it was awful. And the kids didn't like it, and they didn't do it. And you pair this with the fact that kids can pass no matter what and they wouldn't get in trouble for doing any of the work. So I was going out of my way to try to make this awful curriculum exciting. And 90% of my students were not doing the work. They were not turning in the assignments.
Yeah, I've seen pretty much it's backwards. Everything that you would have remembered, even me. Now I know that this is definitely the case for, you know, as age goes on, the difference between like parents and children and grandparents, but this is like people who were like people my age, like their younger brothers and sisters, just seeing the work that they were sent home with. Like the homework was it was almost like a game. Human reason being replaced by effective procedures. An effective procedure is an operation that enables a definition of a problem domain within formal mathematics, leaving it open for later computation using a machine. This formalization of thought creates the conditions under which aspects of human life are delegated as machine processes. In making machines that think like us, we're making ourselves think like them at the same time. And at the end, the question that I posed there is, what is what translates between the two layers? That's kind of, I guess, the burning question for all of us. And on that note, we can literally jump right over to the text, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. It's by Charlotte Iserbyt. Second printing, February of 2000. The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. The collection of excerpts primarily from the text, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, details a purported systematic effort to transform American education. The author contends that educational reforms, often backed by foundations and government initiatives, have shifted focus from traditional academic instruction to behavioral modification and workforce training. Key concepts explored include outcome-based education, mastery learning, direct instruction, which are presented as methods for changing student values, attitudes, and behaviors rather than fostering critical thinking or high literacy. The sources trace the changes through various historical periods, highlighting connections to figures like John Dewey and B.F. Skinner, suggesting international influences in a long-term plan to reshape society. Ultimately, the author posits that these educational shifts aim to integrate children into a predetermined global workforce training system, undermining parental authority and individual freedom. Interesting, what popped out to me while I was reading that, the word integrate, to integrate children. And if anybody in the audience might be familiar with mathematics, we looked at the word differentiate earlier. In calculus, you have two operations. You have differentiation and you have integration. Without getting into the math, is to integrate, to bring into. So if they're telling teachers you need to have this differentiation in your, the way you teach, you need to make sure, you need to inflict or enable difference. You need to make all your students unique and different. They can't be the same. But then seemingly the goal here to integrate all of these people into the workforce, the New World Order, it's built on insanity. The people who have come up with this giant plan, and I do believe there is this effort. We've kind of seen that proven, at least I have. It's based on insanity. These people, they think that they have a solid plan, but they don't have a solid plan. They are flying blind, but of the worst kind, because they really think that they know what they're doing. They really think that they know what they're doing. Okay, so let's go into some of the details. The central argument across the excerpts is that the American education system has been and continues to be deliberately transformed away from traditional academic learning towards a system focused on behavioral modification, socialization, and workforce training. This transformation is presented not as an accidental decline, but as a deliberate dumbing down, the name of the book, stemming from a long-term coordinated agenda driven by powerful, often pretty much always unelected, national and international entities. The author emphasizes that this is a 100-year plan to dumb down the populace. I mean, I think vast majority of people would probably agree with that. You grew up with Beavis and Butthead and turned out okay. Yeah, Beavis and Butthead was a pretty good show. Honestly, it's the dopamine hits. It's this more, everything it's more. The dopamine hits, they've gotten faster. You can have things at your fingertips in the blink of an eye. And so, me, I don't have much frame of reference, but what I do wonder is I wonder if, for instance, Boots, I'm going to just use you as an example because you're in the audience and I know that you are much older than I am. So if I were to immediately teleport you back into the year 1980, assuming that you're still you from right now and you know what technology is, do you think that you would go back to a time where there's no technology? Do you think that you would kind of be shocked at how slow it feels after living in today, 2026, where things are so fast now? And, we've all aged, in kind of a linear fashion, and so it doesn't appear that way. It's slow, it's gradual. And I've talked recently, past couple of days, about gradualism. And so it's that gradualism, but it's like even if people who had lived in that time, and that's why I use you as an example, because I didn't live in 1970 or 80 or anything like that. But if you were to go back right now, I feel like even people who were there would still just be like, man, it's like, man, I didn't know how I passed the time all those years ago. Because it's so hard for me to even imagine. So I guess I have to kind of project the simulation there, I guess, because I don't have that frame of reference. I have no frame of reference there. And that's a big difference I have seen just with my own eyes, probably to a bit of a detriment, because it seems like there are certain things, ways that patterns of thinking, ways that people who were born into the world, they don't have that frame of reference. They don't remember the world without technology. I feel like there's a hard time communicating certain specific concepts. Yeah, when MTV actually had music videos, that's a good point, Scorpion, because then MTV does away with music videos after a while. Why did they do away with it? What? My guess, because this really is one and the same thing, they do away with it because they want to make more money. And so they're going to give people more juice. They're going to give people more dopamine hits. So I guess music wasn't cutting it anymore, and they were going to do something more exciting, you know? And novelty. Let's use the word novelty. Somebody had phrased it that way to me a long time ago. Novelty. Something new. Exciting. Excitement. And so, yeah, the author emphasizes that this is a 100-year plan to dumb down the population. And this book came out the year I was born, 1999. So this book is as old as me. That's crazy. The key themes of the book. First is a shift from academics to behaviorism and socialization. Behaviorism is training. B.F. Skinner, who had the Skinner boxes, you know, you'd put like a rat into a little box and it could give itself food if it pressed a lever. Excuse me. Talking too fast. If you put the rat in a box and it could press a lever and it would drop like a small pellet of food, and it could train itself. You know, it would learn to press the lever to get food. Pavlov and his dog, famous example. So behaviorism is pretty much reward and punishment. Now, there's a positive reward and a negative reward. A negative reward doesn't mean something bad. It actually just means that you're taking away something negative. So I'm going to reward you by taking away a restriction. That's a negative a negative reward. That is a negative reward. A positive reward is I'm giving you something that you like. So if you do me a favor, I'll give you $10. You know, you want $10, so that's a positive reward. And then in terms of punishment, it works the same. A positive punishment is to inflict something undesirable. So if a positive punishment would be, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to slap you on the hand, just as an example. A negative punishment would be taking away something good. So you could take away a teenager, they have a phone or something, you take away a phone, that's a negative punishment. So there are 4 quadrants to behavioralism. This is B.F. Skinner. And this is heavily plays into MK Ultra, Monarch. It's all training a dog. You're training the dog to drool in food when it sees, to imagine food when it hears the bell. So it goes on, it says, traditional education defined as drawing out of a person's innate talents and abilities by imparting the knowledge of languages, scientific reasoning, history, literature, rhetoric, etc., the sowing of the seeds, has been replaced by a focus on socialization, not learning. This involves modifying thoughts, feelings, and actions of students. Centralization control, or centralized control, and internationalization. The transformation is orchestrated through federal government policies, international organizations like UNESCO, influential tax-exempt foundations and think tanks, leading to a loss of local control and the imposition of a national and ultimately global education agenda. Workforce training into planned economy education is increasingly redefined as job training and preparation for a seamless, non-competitive global system for commerce and trade. I had to laugh a little bit because it's a global non-competitive system. All right, it sure is. A global non-competitive system for commerce and trade, or a socialist fascist system on the other end. Students are viewed as human capital resources to be trained for predetermined life roles within a planned economy. That seems to have proven itself to be true. Behavioral psychology and mind control. The core methodology employed is based on the theories of B.F. Skinner with operant conditioning and Wilhelm Wundt, it's a V, German Wundt, stimulus response, aiming to destroy free will, Bertrand Russell, and produce predictable results and robotized citizens for the new pagan age, the age of Aquarius, that we've already talked about in the past couple episodes. There's always a little bit of overlay here. It's one big thing when you put enough side by side. I mean, I've got more that I don't think you could read all of the books that I've stored and just picked shortened portions out and gone through. It's just more than anybody could ever go through, and you start to see so much overlap from a bird's eye view. Semantic deception, and there's gradualism. The agenda is implemented through semantic deception, applied linguistics, using seemingly innocuous terms to mask radical changes through gradualism, heating the frog in the water slowly so resistance is minimized. Erosion of parental rights and privacy. The system seeks to diminish parental authority over their children's education and private lives, collecting extensive personal data and involving state agents in home life. And that's definitely happened. Evolution in the late 18th and 19th centuries, the sowing of the seeds. This is the Prussian education system. I've heard a lot of people talk about that specific connection. It is the Prussian model by far. The present government education system started as a Prussian import in the 1840s and 50s. It was a system built on Hegel's belief that the state was God walking on earth. Shift from classical education. Philosophies of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Wilhelm Wundt, and John Dewey initiated a total departure from the traditional definition of education. Wundt's psychology led to education becoming the process of exposing the student to meaningful experiences so as to ensure desired reactions. John Dewey and the progressive education, described as a Fabian socialist and the father of progressive education, Dewey used the psychology developed in Leipzig by Wilhelm Wundt. His radical recommendation was to build the curriculum not around academic subjects, but around occupational activities which provided maximum opportunities for peer interaction and socialization, to combat the independent intelligence, which was basically antisocial. So the idea is to put everybody into a herding pretty much. You don't want to have anybody thinking on their own. You want people to only think with the group. In other words, behavioralism. Early foundations, wealthy American families and their tax-exempt foundations, such as the General Education Board endowed by John D. Rockefeller Sr. in 1902, funded educational laboratory, the educational laboratory to experiment with early innovations in education. Funded educational laboratories to experiment with early innovations in education. A lot of that had to do with petroleum-based medicines. I know that we've talked a whole lot about that. The socialist organizations, the Intercollegiate Socialist Society, the ISS, later the League for Industrial Democracy, LID, was founded in 1905 with prominent figures like Upton Sinclair, Jack London. John Dewey became its president in 1939. That's true. The only thing, well, Scorpion, the one thing that I had told a friend of mine a couple of days ago, I said, if you work in dealing with the public, you definitely know about how stupid people are. But if that's the case, you always, working with the public long enough, you always discover that somehow they can get worse. It's like, somehow it can always, just like people can always get stupider. It's like, sometimes it would surprise me. But somehow, and you only understand that if you've worked in public facing jobs. It always will blow your mind with something even crazier. The Montessori method, connected to cosmic education and praised by Mahatma Gandhi, the Montessori method is cited as an educational program beneficial for global children for the new age. So we already know what that's connected to. The 1920s and 30s, the troubling 30s, collectivization and internationalism. The Council on Foreign Relations endorsed the world government in 1922. The International Bureau of Education, established in 1925 with Rockefeller Foundation grants, later becoming part of UNESCO. Training the elite. The goal was to train an elite to think, feel, and act internationally. Soviet influence. Professor George Counts of Columbia University. That's a Professor Jesuit. George Counts of Columbia University Teachers College, deeply involved in the Carnegie Foundation Finance Commissions, became convinced the Soviet communist system was the ultimate system. The 8-year study, 1932, initiated by the Progressive Education Association. The study aimed for fundamental reconstruction of a secondary education based on fuller knowledge of the learning process and the needs of young people in our society. The Humanist Manifesto, 1933, co-authored by John Dewey, called for a synthesizing of all religions and a socialized and cooperative economic order. Secular humanism was later defined as a religion by the Supreme Court. That's interesting. So humanism is pretty much Darwinism for the most part, because humanism is pretty much that all of the books are figures of speech. None of it's real. Material world is all that's real. There's nothing that we can't see. And basically that eventually whoever gets to the top of the food chain, meaning whoever wins out intelligent in terms of intelligence, or whoever's the most enlightened. So it's basically deification of man, way I see it at least. Scorpion says, I just want people to drive the speed limit. We have brain dead drivers out here in the South. Man, it's very puzzling to me that I think it was a year or two ago, they actually said they named the word brain rot as the word of the year. It might have been last year or the year before, I can't remember. But they made the word of the year, brain rot. And I'm like, man, I don't know. Maybe I just read too much into that. But if that's the word of the year, it's almost like speaks for itself. Like, why was that the word of the year? Why is that a word that's in the collective unconscious? Like, where did that come from? Okay, let's see. Conclusions and recommendations for the Social Studies, 1934, funded by the Carnegie Corporation. This report was described by Professor Harold Lasky as an educational program for a socialist America. It advocated for adjusting individuals to this changing society, a closely integrated and interdependent world society. the technology is seeped in. Seems like that's the common thread here. That's why I kind of made the transition with that quote, because it would actually seem that there is some trade occurring, if you will, making machines that think like us. We're making ourselves think like machines. And so it's almost like, put it this way, it's like a door. It's like if you walk through the door, you're on the other side. And so they say we live in a metaverse now. You know, we live in a meta, Facebook meta, and then you have metaverse. And they tried to push that on us, and nobody was interested in it. But meta is a Hebrew word. It means dead. So it's like a zombie apocalypse. Dead, you mean? Like, people just walking around and they don't know what... It's like they're dead inside. There's no rotting flesh. There's only rotting brains, because brain rot was the word of the year, so... Just saying. Never know. The 1940s and 50s. A fomentation, behavioral control, and moral relativism. Moral relativism, that's a big thing today. UNESCO's role, the United States membership in UNESCO in 1946 set in motion the destabilization of our society through the rejection of absolute morals and values, Judeo-Christian tradition, and Roman law. President Harry Truman's statement, education must establish the moral unity of mankind. B.F. Skinner and Operant Conditioning. In 1953, Skinner published Science and Human Behavior, advocating for the systematic control of human behavior. His goal for education was to destroy free will, so individuals would be incapable of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. And so honestly, it's interesting, because that right there is... It seems that I would argue that they have put that plan in motion. I would perfectly argue that. Because I didn't bring it up, but B.S. Skinner, I had heard a really interesting a video or something a while back about how social media acts as a Skinner box. It's like we are the rat pushing the little pellet because it's views.
What is a Skinner box? The term comes from psychologist B.F. Skinner, who ran experiments on pigeons. He would put them in a box, the Skinner box, and give them a button to press that could give them food. For one group in the experiment, pressing the button gave no food, so predictably, the pigeons did not keep pressing it. For another group, when the button was pressed, food would come out. Great, they pressed the button when they were hungry. But the last group was subjected to something called a variable schedule. Basically, when they pressed the button, there was some chance that food might come out. This time, the pigeons pressed the button over and over and over, the food accumulating.
So, I don't know if she's going to mention this, but the variable schedule is very fascinating in like when you start looking into it. Let's see if she says it, and I'll say it if she doesn't.
And going uneaten, because the uncertainty of whether a button press would be rewarded with food was hacking the reward circuit of their brains and giving them dopamine just from pressing the button. There's been a lot of interesting research into processes like dopamine ramps. Basically, normally when a rat knows food is coming, there's a dopamine spike, up-down. But if the rat has to do something to get the food, like press a button, the dopamine stays high while the rat anticipates the action. I'll cover a lot of this in depth in a future video on dark patterns, but the main takeaway is that these findings also seem to apply to humans. And this strange hack for the way our brains release dopamine kind of explains why you might find immediate short-term pleasure in scrolling your phone, but when you look back at that time you spent, you regret it. It's not even clear what you enjoyed. So in contrast, if a friend sends you a funny video and you watch it and enjoy it, you got dopamine from the video, just like the rats get a dopamine spike from actual food. But if you just scroll through the videos, you're not necessarily getting dopamine from the content. You're getting it from the scrolling and the anticipation of something good. Scrolling is just an artificial way of tricking your brain into feeling good for no reason.
And so, the rat would push the button and the pellet would drop. And so influencers go and they do things to get views and they get money and they like, having people watch them and being the center of attention and whatever. And it's a Skinner box. And so I would argue that they have put this plan into practice. Bloom's taxonomy, it provided the finishing and crucial touch to Dewey's foundation, emphasizing changes and thoughts, feelings, and actions for the benefit of society as a whole. Moral Chaos, the work of Kinsey, Alfred Kinsey, he was a mess. Bloom and Skinner, these are the worst people who have come together pretty much, provided the ingredients for future moral chaos. Brainwashing techniques. Bella V. Dodd, a former Communist Party member, described how communists sought to destroy our schools by advocating modern math, so basically new math, that pupils cannot apply to life situations, and progressive education. Robert Morris detailed cybernetics, a technique of brainwashing developed by communists to demolish the minds and spirits of men. Cybernetics, that's fascinating that popped up because cybernetics is today they're really into the AI movement. They are into AI consciousness. They're into it's like the Curtis Yarvins, the Nick Land, Joe Rogan is arguably one of them. He's into that. He said some questionable things, and he's real friendly with Peter Thiel. So, cybernetics, machines. The 1960s, the sick 60s, federal expansion and behavioral management. The National Defense Education Act in 1958 passed as a result of Sputnik. This act set the stage for incredible federal control of education through heavy financing for behavior modification, science, mathematics, guidance, counseling, and testing. Goals for Americans, 1960. President Eisenhower's Commission on National Goals produced a blueprint for a planned economy, providing a catalyst for PPBS and Bloom's taxonomy. Federal aid to education without capital, 1961, Congressman John M. Ashbrook exposed a blueprint for complete domination and direction of our schools from Washington, including implementation of international education projects in cooperation with UNESCO. Arms Control and Discernment Act, 1961, proposed the disbanding of all national armed forces other than those required to preserve internal order and for contributions to a United Nations peace force. Computer in Future Instructional Systems, 1963, predicted effortless learning, attitude changing, and training in decision making through machines that detect which attitudes are out of phase and which of these are amenable to change. That's interesting, Boots. I didn't know that, but Scorpion replied to Boots. He said Nashville is the new LA, and I guess definitely there's nothing going on over there now. They're saying they're going to use that for I don't know, just take it with a grain of salt, but I heard somebody say that there was this comment that, we should use those cities for military training. We're going to just use them to do training because they're so run down, and it's like LA and San Francisco. So I imagine they had went somewhere. One thing I had heard a while back, and I don't know if this is happening or what, but I heard that they were supposed to open another stock market. Like, you have Wall Street, but then they were supposed to open another one in Dallas, Texas, or somewhere in Texas. I don't know if that's still happening, but seems like a pretty big deal. Individually prescribed instruction. So there's that differentiation again. IPI. Field tested by federally funded research for better schools. This program set the stage for Skinnerian behavioral mastery learning, direct instruction, and the use of Skinner boxes, the computers. Absolutely. That's a good observation. I didn't think of that. Yeah, it's supposedly a really big compound that he's built there. These are going to have consequences, I think, for a long time. Vegas, you said Vegas is bad also. Somebody had told me, and I have never been to Vegas, but they told me that pizza there is like $20 for one slice, and I was like, I'm probably never going to go there because that's ridiculous. That is so insane. Like I just wouldn't go there because of it. Like $20, $30 for a piece of pizza. There's no reason for me to go there. I don't make enough money to go there. Yeah. These in Ohio, I was going to say to Scorpion, because you said Elon's building Skynet in Memphis. In Ohio, they have pretty much said, yeah, it's okay. You can just dump all the water that you used to cool down the AI data centers. You can just dump it back into the rivers or whatever. And we're okay lowering the water quality. It would be for economic development. So they really said this. And now they're conducting business in seemingly these shady ways. So like they're trying to do business in such a way that people can't push back because they don't know what's going on. So these cities, when it comes to these data centers, they're about to get a big payout, the people who do the stabbing in the back, because Judas gets the 30 pieces of silver, so Judas gets paid. And so all these people who sell out their cities and sell out their children's futures, because they're not worried about school, they're worried about AI data centers. Because see, this book right here was 1999, as old as me. This book is as old as me. And everything that I've read, I don't think there's anything I really disagree with. It's pretty much what we're living through right now. But they're worried about whatever will bring them money. And so if that's selling everybody out for data centers, they will do it in secret, and they will get their payday and let them have fun with it while it lasts. Let's see. Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the ESEA of 1965, marked the end of local control and the beginning of nationalization, internationalization of education, funding Skinnerian basic skills and programs for low-income minority students. Education Commission of the States, ECS, formed in 1965 with grants from the Carnegie Corporation and Ford Foundation to evolve a nationwide policy. Psychosynthesis, Assagioli is the guy's name, I guess, credited with integrating psychology with spirituality. I would think that was Carl Jung, but I don't know who this guy is. Laying the groundwork for holistic education and role-playing. Planning, programming, budgeting systems, PPBS, applied to education. This management tool of political control was championed by Governor Ronald Reagan in California. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, completely honest with you. It's hard for me to have a reference because I am very turned off to big urban cities, even though the pun is just realized that my name is Urban, but I'm not a fan of urban cities. I don't like the cities. I don't think that's how I would like to live. It seems like when people to get concentrated like that. People are more, it's like pressurizing something. You know, if you put something under pressure and you pack the, you know, the molecules close together, they'll pop, they'll blow up if you put too much pressure on people. And so I live kind of in the sweet spot. It's not too far, not too close. But I don't have any reference for LA. I don't have any reference for New York. Never been to Las Vegas. It's only what I have seen and heard. But it's just like I don't have anything that I don't think I would need to go there for anything. You know, I maybe would like to just see it, but I would go somewhere. There's other places that I would rather see. Let's see. The school system of the future. What is the irony? It's 2026, so we're reading about the school system of the future. And it's 2026, and we just got done. That's part of the reason I played those clips at the beginning, because now you can know what the school system of the future is. And they're talking about it here in 1968. Envision parents as teacher aides. That's pretty funny. Envision parents as teacher aides in continuous development mastery learning, with computer technology handling workforce training and whatever education remains.
Predominantly white school is not inherently better. I got into the schools and I realized these teachers weren't doing anything revolutionary. What was different? The difference is that the kids were coming to school more prepared. That looks like kindergartners not just coming to school reading, but coming to school reading on a first or second grade level, because their parents have created this literacy-rich culture in their homes. They're overhearing these conversations. They're coming to school not just counting to 10, but counting to 20 in multiple languages. And so there's this head start, not because the teachers are doing anything. And again, this is not to take away from phenomenal teachers, because I am one. But it just means that when parents bring their children to school prepared, it makes all the difference.
The limit case is the parents who literally train their kids to make content. Kids are always at the ready to perform for the camera, even when they don't want to.
Act like you're crying. Really quick.
I didn't cry.
Go like this.
No, Mom, I'm actually seriously crying.
No, I know, but go like this for the video. Go like this. Put one hand up. Go like this. No, go like this. Put your hand like this. But let them see your mouth. Let them see your mouth.
And especially when they don't have siblings or friends to play outside with, this is what they live for. This is what their life, their childhood has become.
POV, your toddler is trained to make content, and in the first shot, the toddler is looking tired. And then as soon as her parents signal her to start dancing, she immediately starts dancing with them with a smile on her face because she's been trained to do so. This is absolutely vile.
I'm old-fashioned enough to remember that instead of making family TikTok content, kids would get a Slinky or go to Chuck E. Cheese. Okay. Before Chuck E. Cheese ended too and became an adult bar.
5 equals 12.
Basically only existed from 1960.
Bill collector is not
Never give our kids a screen.
Can all of us as a generation collectively agree to not give our kids iPads?
But a lot of the Gen Betas will have parents who are either millennials, who give their kids iPads all the time, or Gen Alpha kids themselves who won't be able to read. So the Zoomers are the front line of defense to protect Gen Beta's minds. It's gonna be a war out there.
We're almost out of food. How much money is left? 40 Robux. Should last us 10 days. Good. I still can't believe it turned out like this. Yeah, I miss the days when we were still iPad kids. They couldn't separate us, me and my iPad, or I cry. That was equivalent to torture. Amen, brother. So how long have you guys been off the pads? I'm 5 years clean today. But I still get the iPad withdrawals. Here, do the exercises. I try to remember happy thoughts from your childhood. Cocoa melon. Skibbity toilet. Thanks. Let's see if there's any news on the radio. Wait a minute. I love this song. Hey, at least we're in the peak era of music. Hey, get it, antenna. You kids and your stupid dancing and music. Don't be a gyatho. Back in my day, dancing didn't look so stupid. There was grace to it. See? Okay, Zoomer. Hey, we fought for you Gen Alpha's freedom while you let the Gen Betas become slaves. Don't blame us. You knew the naming convention was a self-fulfilling prophecy. ChatGPT found us! Run!
Side playing on iPad.
Like, it's just sad to see that Gen Z, you know, those of us who are adults, are the ones who are outside playing during family functions and making memories with our loved ones, while Gen Alpha is wasting their childhood away by being inside, not talking to each other and playing on their iPads. And that is what really upsets Gen Z, because we
didn't know at the time, but it seems like we were the last generation to have played outside.
And that's what we've got today, and that's what we're seeing play out there. And honestly, I think the lesson that I would leave anybody with today is, if you can, I understand that it's hard, but if you have any means to consider homeschooling, it's just the only advice I can give you. Again, I know it's not within everybody's ability to do that, but there's no other advice I can really give within the public education system, because they are not even giving the teachers the freedom to read with their classes. They're mandating enlightened, and this right here, everything we're reading is enlightened education. And they're telling them that if you don't do this, you can't be teaching here. And so they're quitting, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. It's pretty clear that everybody, from the principals to most of in the cases that I've seen, parents, they don't want to meet anybody in the middle. They don't want to establish that there is a problem. They want to pass blame around for the problem. But that's the wrong argument. The wrong argument is, hey, the kid has a problem. Are we going to find a way to fix it, or are we going to figure out who is responsible for the problem? And that's all we're going to worry about. And that's what I've seen from, just lately, but my own life and my life experience thus far. I don't blame the teachers. I really don't. And it seems like they are the ones that are getting the worst end of it, because I've sat and I've read comments on people who have talked about their experiences as teachers, and they just get the worst comments. And people just go, it's your fault, your fault, your fault. Because obviously, I empathize to the extent, if you're a parent and you're working your butt off and your kid is just falling behind, or even if you fell behind, now your kid's falling behind. I get that scares and makes people upset, or it's a soft spot. I understand that. But at the end of the day, we will have no choice but to accept the AI government BS stuff if people can't read. If they can't read, then they have no choice. Because if you've ever seen the movie WALL-E, with the people riding around in their little chairs and watching the TV, yeah, that's what we're looking at. And so really, partly this video was motivated because I don't know if this is even being presented to people who are older than I am, people who have children. I don't know if they're being told about this, because it seems like that's what happens. You will get children seeing things meant for only adults need to see this type of stuff, and then you have adults that are seeing the most childish stuff. They're not seeing that their kids have got major problems at schools and they can't read and stuff. That's interesting, Boots. Have you found anything good? Do they make a good steak? Do they make a good lunch or dinner? Man, maybe that's the secret, that's the only place that knows how to do it. Yeah. And everything is, it used to be local stores and now it's chains, but then everything is becoming like a template. It's a machine. Everything's the same. Everything is an assembly line. And that is the reverse of we're thinking like machine, or we're making machines that think like us, but in return the machines are making us think like them. And it's that, then you have the emergence of these assembly line factories, and you go and you look at the Ford factory in the 1930s or something, and it just looks like absolute hell. It looks just horrible, and it's almost like, that's the cold, reptilian, gray, whatever, hell. board, I guess you could say. Let's see. Let's go ahead and rapid fire through some of these. Project READ, the Carnegie Corporation, programmed textbooks designed to induce arson and guerrilla warfare through suggestive imagery. That's interesting. Arson and guerrilla warfare through suggestive imagery. Talked about that a little bit on this with Armageddon programming. Community education, labels like communitarianism, participatory democracy, participation trophies, school-based clinics are presented as veiled forms of the socialistic philosophy. The role of the schools in the community in 1969 advocated for schools to emphasize how to meet new situations on the skills of research, observation, analysis, logic, and communication, on the development of attitudes appropriate to change, and on a commitment to flexibility and reason, and for group therapy, role-playing, and encounter group approach. The 1970s, the serious 70s, deepening the transformation, prohibition against federal control of education in 1970, Section 432 General Education Provisions Act, a law that has been consistently undermined. Totalitarian Blueprint, a top-secret document from 1971, revealed plans for controlling upheavals and anarchic behavior associated with social change and discontent using operant conditioning, sensitivity training to control the population through positive reinforcement. So that, remember, positive reinforcement is positive reward. Same, reinforcement is reward. The child himself is the product. PPBS applied to education meant the child, his feelings, his values, his behavior, as well as his intellectual development is a product. Global Economy, Roy Ash in 1972 articulated increasing economic businesses, interdependence among nations, and major steps towards a single world economy, with multinational corporations playing a key role in international institutions like the IMF becoming central. Becoming a planetary citizen. This is back in 1972. Dr. Chester M. Pierce of Harvard advocated for children to develop the same kind of loyalty to the earth as to his homeland. This is not new at all. Models of Teaching, Bruce Joyce and Marsha Wiles' book, funded by the U.S. Office of Education, became foundational for in-service teacher training and behavior modification. National Diffusion Network programs like the Curriculum Meeting Modern Problems and Positive Attitude Turns Learning used behavior modification techniques, value clarification, and role-playing. Becoming a Nation of Readers, 1984, a major report that endorsed direct instruction as a primary method for reading, linking it to Skinnerian or behavioral operant conditioning. Comprehensive Employment and Training Act consolidated federal job training programs promoting skill training for life roles and a national management system. Man, Education, and Society, the year 2000. Alvin Toffler and others discuss education's role in a future where technological change has thrown up a challenge to our nation's political, economic, and educational institutions, necessitating a deliberate search for values to teach. And I'm going to speed through some of these a bit. Cuban Children Combined Studies Work, 1976. The School Site Management System, in 76. The International Standard Classification for Education, 76. The Global Servant Concept in 1976 as well. Lifelong Learning. The Soviet Experience in Educational Technology. The Gifted and Talented Program, all about that. Schooling for a Global Age in the 80s. Policy About Policy. Mastery Learning Endorsement. Project BEST, A Nation at Risk, Regulated Competition in the United States, Computers for Values, suggested computers might be better for values education than teachers. This was in 1982, as they lack misguided need to get to know you and the real you. So they lack a personal relationship with the student. So they believe that computers would be better than humans. The people in charge have lost their mind. That was, I think, the first show I did the other night with you guys. Behavior, B.F. Skinner's education model, outcome-based education. Some of these you're still hearing today. Outcome-based was conceived in 1979 as a way to better manage and ensure the survival of mastery learning, focusing equally on outcomes as well as processes. It required community re-education. I bet that'll go well. Community re-education and renorming activities to overcome resistors. The conspiracy of silence about teaching. B.F. Skinner argued that improving methods of teaching would do more to help public education and advocated for instruments, computers, to allow students to progress at their own pace. Politics of change. Suggested creating crisis, such as catastrophes having a physical effect on the community, mounting cost of government to lead radical change. Man, all of this stuff is actually they've set the plans up a long time ago. The Hatch Amendment witness testimony exposed controversial mastery learning programs such as ECRI, Project Instruct, DISTAR, based on Skinnerian operant conditioning, using rewards and punishments on students, parents, and teachers. Shamanistic Rituals in Effective Schools, a paper critical of effective schools research which required OBE, mastery learning, direct instruction, for using shamanistic rituals to affect organizational health and control uncertain events through changing tests and testing procedures. Let's see. National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, Year-Round Schools and Cooperation, Education 2000. '90s. Paradigm Change, America 2000 Plan, Global Alliance for Transforming Education. That's another GATE program. Schools of the Future. There are a lot of these. There's Oregon lawsuit. Yeah, these are many in number. The core methodologies and their consequences, behavior modification, the MK Ultra, basically training people as animals, husbandry, you could call it. The Skinner principles, learning is the result of modifiability in the paths of neural conduction. This involves positive reinforcement and rewards and punishments leading to predictable results. The goal was to change the thoughts, actions, and feelings of students, reducing the human being to nothing but a machine. Consequences leading to frustration and dehumanization, discourages individuality and creative thinking. It aims for the mechanization of man as well as the mechanization of the environment. Robot, citizen, that being the ultimate goal, to create robotic drones, zombies, responding to whomever wishes to control them for whatever purpose. Mastery learning, direct instruction, and outcome-based education. Those are in interchangeable terms. Teach to the test. Both payment for results and OBE are based on teacher accountability and require teaching to the test. The teachers are being held to standards. Basically, the only way that we are going to monitor your worth as a teacher. Basically, how good of a teacher are you? Well, it depends on the test, nothing more, nothing less. And I mean, I guess you can be technical. Sure, test results are good, but I think there's a lot more nuance to it. And if you reduce teaching to that, you've lost the point. A lot of these cradle to grave monitoring, this is fascinating because it seems like all of this stuff you come across, and hindsight is just 2020. The book as old as me is talking about cradle-to-grave monitoring. A system aims to create a totalitarian data-gathering system with a number code for each specific piece of information on every citizen from date of birth, including the health record number, Medicaid number, Social Security number, extending to their oral, dental health, speed, express, electronic data linking education and the world of work, a career passport, a collection of student records that showcase past performance, linking education to employment, skills passports. The implication is that without a skills passport, one may not be able to get a job in the future, aka go and give money to the college universities so that they can gamble it away. Let's see. A lot of this has to do with tax-exempt foundations, international organizations, the federal government, obviously, key individuals. The author, Charlotte Iserbyt, John M. Ashbrook, who's the congressman, John Dewey, B.F. Skinner, Benjamin Bloom, Alfred C. Kinsey, Mark Tucker, William Spady, Thomas Sticht, Donald Thomas, Shirley McCoon, etc. Many individuals who have moved between government, academia, foundations. I honestly didn't even know that James was, is he back on TikTok? Because I don't use TikTok. I loved the Bot or Not show. I really wish that he could get, oh man, that sucks. I really wish we could find a way to do the Bot or Not again. That was so fun. I remember because I would always join in, when he was doing that, I would be getting off of work at late at night, and so any time I would be getting off, he would be doing the show, so I would always sit out there and chill out after work and watch the show. So yeah, TikTok, it's not the same, man. Like, TikTok is the self-editing is getting so twisted and demented. It's like you have to change the way you think to be on the platform, and that's past the point of no return. Honestly, I have my complaints with YouTube too, but it has good features. I've done pretty well on there. I'm nearing 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is the most I've ever had. Resistance and warnings, parental opposition. Parents have resisted for over 50 years. Values education, values clarification, and psychological manipulation in schools. They're often dismissed as conspiracy theorists or resistors, or told you're the only parent who ever complained. I don't know, what did he do? Tell the truth? What did he do? Say that the sky was blue? And that was offensive because there's a flag that we're not allowed to talk about that's blue too. That's probably their reasoning, if I had to guess. TikTok, listen, it got to the point when I was on there, it got to the point I couldn't post anything. Everything I would post would get a strike, or it would get hidden. It's just ridiculous. So I said I'm not getting back on there anymore. Teacher resistance. Teachers have shown immense teacher and student resistance to this type of manipulation, with many talented teachers leaving the profession. Unfortunately, what's happened is that they've actually driven away all of the good teachers. Like, all of the teachers who were on it, you know, who really cared, they have made them go crazy, and now they had to leave because they didn't want to hate what they do. You know, when you're a teacher, if you get to a point where you don't like doing what you're doing, you really shouldn't stay, because that's the worst combination possible. It's like, you don't want to be a teacher and not like it, because then you're going to take it out on the people you're teaching usually. Local level successes. Instances like the South St. Paul School Board's resolution against teaching certain values and the temporary halt of the OBE in Littleton, Colorado, demonstrates that local efforts could slow the agenda. Whistleblowers and researchers, individuals like Charlotte Iserbyt, the author, Norman Dodd, Samuel Bloomfield, and Dennis Cuddy, are cited for their extensive documentation and exposure of these trends. Warnings of totalitarianism. The transformation is likened to an Orwellian world and a totalitarian black hole of a socialist one-world government. Conclusion. Call to action. The author issues a dire warning about the future of American freedom and self-governance. If the current educational trajectory continues unchecked, the solution proposed is a return to local control and funding of education free from the federal and state mandates and the influence of the corporate/education elite. The central message is that Americans must understand the true nature of this transformation, recognize their agency as human beings with free will, and actively resist the deliberate dumbing down to preserve liberty. As the author states, the fight against it is the culminating issue of all time in which every human being is a protagonist. And see, that's a good quote to end it on, because here we are with hindsight 2020, and we're really at the point now where that's been proven. That's crazy, man. Wow. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's gone, like, that's what I mean. It's like you shouldn't have had to go through that much trouble just to type something, and so it's made you, like, you've had to develop a whole new ritual to accomplish something, to play the game of this platform. And I don't like that. That's what's gotten so worse over the last probably 5 years. When I was young, I was like 10 or 11, and I had like a little flip camera, and I was like uploading videos to YouTube back in the early days, and there was no restrictions. You could play whatever music you wanted, you do whatever you wanted. It was great back then, but now it's all machine-like. So back to the point, right? And so that's the end of the article. I got through it because I was on a roll there, but is our children learning? No, they're not learning much right now. I think we're coming really to a point where we are going to have to pull back on the technology if we want to save ourselves. I think we're definitely going to have to get to that point, because if not, we're going to be digitally herded into an unescapable things. Tammy on YouTube says TikTok's terms and conditions are unacceptable. I don't understand how anybody could agree to them and be on their platform. Look it up, you'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's gotten crazy. It was fine when I first got on there years ago, and it took a couple downturns, and now it's just like I lost 3 accounts, and I just got tired of making new ones. I lost 2 accounts because anything I would post, even the like 30-second clip, it would get hidden or get a strike. So yeah, as much as possible, we have to kind of pull ourselves back, and we have to get as undependent on this as possible. And one silver lining that I'm seeing is, mentioned in one of those videos earlier, people my age, like that are having children, since we grew up with it, we understand the problem much more, and so we're pretty universally in agreed as parents that we're just not going to give our kids technology until they're like 10 or 15 or 16 or something, you know? But, all right. I think that'll sum it up for this show. I think these are clear indications that the education system has been co-opted. I think that it really just is a plane that's crashing right now, unfortunately. Now, let me clarify, that doesn't mean that the federal government should go in there and just fix it, because that doesn't work. It has never worked. It does need to go back to some type of small community-based education, maybe. You know, if you can let a city run their own education, that would be great, but that's a long way away. But guys, it is 2 a.m. here, Sunday the 15th. I appreciate everybody tuning in on all the different platforms, and I will be back tomorrow, Sunday night, and James will be back on Wednesday, the 18th. Only a few more days. So, I will find something interesting for y'all tomorrow, and I hope everybody has a good night, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Be well.